First Contact's Last Laugh. Admiral Chen Zhang stood at the viewport of Orbital Command Station Artemis, watching the countless stars shimmer against the backdrop of infinite space. The notification she'd been expecting for the past 30 years finally flashed across her neural interface. Zylaxian warships detected entering the Sol system. She took a slow sip of her jasmine tea, savoring its delicate aroma. The porcelain cup, a family heirloom dating back to 21st century Earth, felt warm and reassuring in her hands. "Display fleet composition," she commanded softly. The AI assistant materialized a holographic overlay across the viewport, highlighting the incoming vessels in pulsing red markers. 27 capital ships, 142 support vessels, estimated crew complement of 300,000. It reported in measured tones. "Right on schedule," Chen murmured, allowing herself a small smile. The Zylaxians, with their rigid adherence to their so-called galactic hierarchy, had always been predictable. Their declaration of war had come exactly as humanity's quantum probability engines had calculated it would, down to the precise stellar minute. The massive view screen behind her flickered to life, revealing High Commander Vexthor of the Zylaxian Empire. His crystalline exoskeleton gleamed with bioluminescent patterns that betrayed his agitation, despite his attempt at projecting imperial confidence. "This is your final opportunity to submit to your rightful place in the hierarchy, humans," he announced, his translator converting the harmonics of his native speech into standard Galactic. "Your species has exceeded its designated technological boundaries. This violation cannot stand." Chen turned slowly, deliberately setting her teacup down on its saucer with a soft clink that somehow seemed to echo through the command center. "High Commander," she acknowledged with a slight nod. "I trust your journey through hyperspace was pleasant." The Zylaxian's bioluminescence flared in patterns indicating confusion and anger. "You mock us even now. Your orbital defenses are primitive. Your fleet is outdated. Your civilization ends today." "About those orbital defenses," Chen said, maintaining her calm demeanor, "I believe you'll find some recent upgrades rather interesting." She gestured to her AI assistant. "Initiate Protocol Lazarus." Across Earth's major cities, massive quantum displacement fields shimmed into existence. To the astonishment of the Zylaxian fleet, skyscrapers, neighborhoods, and entire metropolitan areas simply vanished, leaving behind perfectly preserved parkland, as if the cities had never existed. "What trickery is this?" Vexthor demanded, his crystalline form vibrating with fury. "Oh, just a little something we've been working on during these past few centuries of peace," Chen replied. "You see, while you were watching our primitive orbital platforms and outdated fleet, you failed to notice what we were really building." The AI assistant projected a new set of readings across the viewport. Thousands of quantum signatures were appearing throughout the solar system as humanity's true defensive network revealed itself. Space itself seemed to ripple as massive structures phased into reality from adjacent dimensional spaces. "Did you really think we spent 3,000 years just accepting our designated place in your hierarchy?" Chen asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. "We were learning, growing, preparing. Not for war, actually. We had hoped you might eventually see us as equals, but we knew the probability of that outcome was, unfortunately, low." Vexthor's next words came out as a strangled harmonic. "Impossible. Your species cannot have mastered dimensional engineering. The energy requirements alone would be impossible using conventional physics." "Yes," Chen agreed, "which is why we had to rewrite some of the fundamental laws. Did you know that consciousness itself can be used as a quantum catalyst?" "Fascinating discovery. Really, we'd love to share our research." Warning alarms blared across the Zylaxian fleet as their sensors detected massive energy buildups throughout the system. But instead of weapons firing, something even more terrifying happened. Humans started laughing. The sound echoed across all communication channels, from the quantum entanglement networks to the most basic radio frequencies. It wasn't mocking laughter, but rather the genuine mirth of a species that had finally shed its mask of pretense. "Your civilization ends today." Chen echoed Vexthor's words back to him, though there was no malice in her voice. "But not in the way you imagined. Today, humanity stops pretending to be less than we are. The question is, will your civilization end in destruction or in transformation? We greatly prefer the latter." She picked up her teacup again, taking another appreciative sip. "I have fresh jasmine tea here, High Commander. Would you care to join me? We have so much we could learn from each other if you'd only let go of your hierarchical presumptions." The command center fell silent as Chen's offer hung in the space between species. Throughout the solar system, humanity's hidden achievements stood revealed. City-sized quantum computers disguised as asteroids, dimensional gates masquerading as debris fields, and consciousness-powered defense systems that defied conventional physics. And still, humanity laughed. Not in triumph or derision, but in pure joy at finally being able to share their true selves with the galaxy. The choice now lay with the Zalaxians. Adapt to a universe where their assumptions about superiority had been upended, or cling to their hierarchy even as it crumbled around them. Chen waited patiently for Vexthor's response, her teacup sending wisps of fragrant steam into the recycled air of the command center. After all, humanity had already waited 3,000 years. They could wait a few moments more. The art of human warfare. High Commander Vexthor's crystalline form, pulsed with patterns of deep ultraviolet, a sign of extreme agitation that his species rarely displayed. The human's offer of tea, that insignificant organic beverage, felt like a deliberate insult. Yet something in Admiral Chen's calm demeanor gave him pause. "You expect me to believe," he said, each word precisely measured, "that your species has achieved mastery over dimensional engineering while maintaining the facade of a moderately advanced civilization. To what purpose?" The corners of Chen's lips curved upward slightly. "Sometimes the best way to learn about others is to let them underestimate you. Your empire's prejudices made that remarkably easy." A sudden alert flashed across the Zalaxian command deck. 3 of their forward scout ships had vanished without a trace. No debris, no energy signatures, nothing. Vexthor's secondary crystal matrices flared with alarm. "A demonstration," Chen explained, taking another sip of her tea. "Those vessels haven't been destroyed, merely relocated. They're currently in orbit around one of Saturn's moons, where I believe they'll find some of our actual research facilities. Consider it an invitation to learn." Across the solar system, humanity's hidden infrastructure continued to reveal itself. What had appeared to be simple mining operations in the asteroid belt transformed into massive quantum computing arrays. Seemingly abandoned space stations pixelated into existence, revealing themselves as advanced research centers. Dr. Sarah McKenna, humanity's leading quantum consciousness researcher, appeared in a hologram beside Chen. Her dark skin contrasted with the stark white of her lab coat, and her eyes sparkled with barely contained excitement. "The quantum displacement you're witnessing," she explained, addressing the Zalaxian commander directly, "isn't actually technology in the conventional sense. It's more of a dance, a choreographed interaction between consciousness and quantum probability." She gestured, and a complex mathematical model materialized in the space between them. "Your species believes in rigid hierarchies because you see the universe as a fixed structure. We discovered it's more like a song, dynamic, interactive, responsive to the observer's expectations." Vexthor's tactical officer interrupted with another urgent report. The massive Zalaxian fleet, pride of their military, had been subtly surrounded, not by ships or weapons, but by ripples in space-time itself. Every attempt to launch fighters or charge weapons resulted in localized time dilation effects that made such actions impossibly slow. "Did you ever wonder," Chen asked, her voice genuinely curious, "why humans seem to adapt so quickly to new situations? Why our responses to crisis often seem improbable? We learn to embrace chaos rather than impose order. It gives us certain advantages." As if to demonstrate her point, the quantum probability engines that humanity had hidden throughout the solar system began their work in earnest. Space itself seemed to fold and unfold around the Zalaxian fleet, creating patterns that defied conventional physics, but followed their own strange logic. The effect was disorienting to the Zalaxians, whose crystalline biology was attuned to rigid structure and order. But for the humans watching from their various hidden outposts, it was beautiful. Like a cosmic ballet they had spent centuries choreographing. "Your weapons," Vex Thor observed, trying to maintain his composure. "You haven't deployed any." "We don't need to," Dr. McKenna replied with a gentle smile. "The universe itself is our ally. We learn to ask nicely instead of trying to force our will upon it." To demonstrate, she reached out with one hand, and a small portion of space between the fleets transformed into a perfect replica of the Zalaxian crystal garden, a sacred space in their culture. The detail was exact, down to the quantum resonance of each crystal formation. "Your empire is built on the belief that advancement comes through dominance," Chen said, setting down her now empty teacup. "We chose a different path. Every species we encountered, every challenge we faced, they've all taught us something valuable. Even your oppression forced us to grow in ways we might never have imagined." Throughout the solar system, more and more of humanity's true nature was revealing itself. The moon's dark side showed itself to be a massive quantum consciousness laboratory. Mars' supposedly failed terraforming project unveiled itself as a successful planetary engineering testbed, hidden behind perception filters. 3,000 years, Vex Thor said, his voice carrying a new tone. Something approaching awe. "All this time, we thought we were containing you." "In a way, you were," Chen acknowledged. "Just not in the way you intended. You gave us time. Time to learn, to grow, to understand the deeper nature of reality itself. And now we're offering to share that understanding." A new alert sounded on the Zalaxian command deck. Their sensors had finally managed to penetrate the quantum fields around Earth's supposedly evacuated cities. They hadn't vanished at all. They had evolved. Buildings merged seamlessly with natural landscapes, technology, and nature existing in perfect harmony. Energy patterns suggested that the entire planet had become a single, vast quantum computational network. "The tea is getting cold," Chen observed mildly. "But I can always brew a fresh pot. What do you say, High Commander? Shall we discuss how to move forward from here?" "As equals." The silence that followed was heavy with possibility. Throughout both fleets, humans and Zalaxians alike waited to see how their leaders would proceed. The future of two civilizations hung in the balance, wrapped in the simple ceremony of sharing tea, dancing among the stars. Vex Thor's crystalline form shimmered with complex patterns as he studied the cup of jasmine tea Admiral Chen had provided. His species didn't consume liquids this way, but the gesture's significance wasn't lost on him. Behind him, his fleet hung motionless in space, enveloped in quantum probability fields that defied every principle of physics the Zalaxians held sacred. "Your offer of equality," he said finally, his translator struggling to convey the subtle harmonics of his native speech, "it comes after centuries of deception. Why should we trust you now?" Dr. McKenna stepped forward, her hologram adjusting its resolution to better interact with Zalaxian visual sensibilities. "Perhaps we could show you instead of telling you," she suggested. "Would you be willing to experience human consciousness directly?" The request sent ripples of shock through the Zalaxian command staff. Direct consciousness sharing was considered impossible between species. The neural architectures were too different, the risks too great. "Impossible," Vex Thor stated flatly. "Our crystalline neural matrices are fundamentally incompatible with organic thought patterns." Chen smiled. "That's what we wanted everyone to think. The truth is, we solved that particular puzzle about 500 years ago. We just kept it quiet, like so many other things." She nodded to Dr. McKenna, who initiated a complex sequence of quantum manipulations. The space between the human and Zalaxian leaders began to shimmer with possibilities. "What you're seeing," McKenna explained, is the Consciousness Interface Matrix, CM for short. It doesn't translate thoughts directly. Instead, it creates a shared space where different forms of consciousness can interact naturally. The air between them transformed into a dazzling display of crystalline structures interwoven with organic patterns. It was beautiful in both human and Zalaxian aesthetic terms, a visual representation of the bridge between their species. "Your choice, High Commander," Chen said softly. "Experience the truth for yourself." After a moment's hesitation, Vexthor extended one crystalline appendage toward the interface. The moment he made contact, his consciousness expanded into a realm he had never imagined possible. He saw humanity's journey through their own experiences, their early struggles, their discoveries, their gradual understanding that the universe was far more complex and beautiful than anyone had imagined. He felt their joy at each breakthrough, their determination to grow beyond their limitations, their hope for a future where all species could reach their full potential. Most surprisingly, he felt no hatred for the Zalaxians, despite centuries of oppression. Instead, he sensed gratitude for the challenges that had forced humanity to grow, for the pressure that had sparked innovation, for the very restrictions that had taught them to think beyond conventional limitations. When the connection ended, Vexthor's crystalline form displayed patterns that none of his staff had ever seen before. "You turned our own hierarchy against us," he said, but there was no anger in his voice. "While we were watching for military buildups and technological advancements, you were transforming the nature of consciousness itself. We learned early on that the greatest power doesn't come from dominance," Chen replied. "It comes from understanding. Every species in the galaxy has something unique to offer, even those who try to suppress us." As if to emphasize her point, the quantum probability engines throughout the solar system began a new demonstration. The space around Earth rippled with possibility, and suddenly the Zalaxians could see what humanity had built during their long centuries of pretended submission. Hidden in dimensional pockets, powered by the collective consciousness of billions of minds, vast networks of quantum computers had been solving the universe's deepest mysteries. The Moon, far from being a simple satellite, had been transformed into a consciousness research center that operated on principles the Zalaxians had never imagined possible. "Your entire species," Vexthor observed, "has been engaged in this deception. Every human we encountered, every colony we monitored, they all maintained the facade." "Not a deception," Dr. McKenna corrected gently. "A preparation. We knew this day would come, and we wanted to be ready. Not for war, but for this moment of understanding." Throughout the solar system, more and more of humanity's achievements were revealing themselves. What had appeared to be simple defense satellites transformed into consciousness amplifiers. Asteroid mining operations showed their true nature as quantum energy collectors. Even the seemingly primitive human ships began to shift and change, their true forms emerging from carefully maintained probability fields. "We call it the Symphony of Consciousness," Chen explained, pouring another cup of tea. "Every mind in the galaxy contributes to it, whether they know it or not. We just learn to listen. And eventually, to add our own harmonies." A new alert sounded on the Zalaxian command deck. Their sensors were detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system, but unlike anything they had ever encountered, it wasn't weapon energy or shield power. It was pure consciousness, focused and amplified in ways that defied conventional understanding. "This is what we've been building towards," Chen said, her voice carrying a note of hope. "Not the end of your civilization, but the beginning of something new. A galaxy where hierarchy gives way to harmony, where different forms of consciousness can learn from each other instead of trying to dominate one another." She gestured to the elaborate mathematical models still floating in the space between them. "Your species mastered the crystalline form of consciousness. We've learned to bridge the gap between organic and crystalline thought. Imagine what we could accomplish together." The silence that followed was filled with possibility. Throughout both fleets, humans and Zalaxians watched and waited, knowing they were witnessing a moment that would reshape the galaxy's future. And somewhere in that silence, the first notes of a new symphony began to play. The Symphony of Silence. Throughout the Xylaxian fleet, crystalline minds struggled to process what they were witnessing. The quantum probability fields surrounding their ships had begun to resonate with their own consciousness, creating patterns of light and energy that spoke directly to their crystalline nature. It was as if the very fabric of space had learned to sing in their native tongue. "Your quantum consciousness technology," Vexthor said, his translator working overtime to convey the complex harmonics of his amazement. "It adapts to the observer's own neural patterns." Admiral Chen nodded, studying the shifting patterns with evident satisfaction. "We discovered that consciousness itself is universal, even if its expressions differ. The key was learning to create interfaces that could bridge those differences." Dr. McKenna manipulated her holographic controls, causing the consciousness interface matrix to expand. The space between the human and Xylaxian vessels filled with a mesmerizing dance of quantum possibilities, each one representing a different potential future for their species. "What you're seeing now," McKenna explained, "is the temporal consciousness network in action. It doesn't just bridge different types of minds. It connects different moments in time, allowing consciousness to flow across temporal boundaries." A new series of alerts caught Vexthor's attention. Throughout his fleet, crew members were reporting strange experiences, memories that hadn't happened yet, knowledge they couldn't possibly possess, understanding that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Side effects of the quantum field exposition," Chen explained, noting his concern. "Don't worry, it's temporary. Your crews are simply experiencing what we call temporal consciousness bleed. Their minds are touching possible futures, catching glimpses of what could be. In those glimpses, the Xylaxians saw something that shook them to their crystalline cores, a future where their rigid hierarchy had evolved into something far more beautiful and complex. They saw their own civilization transformed not by force or dominance, but by understanding and growth." "Impossible," one of Vexthor's senior officers declared, their crystalline form vibrating with denial. "These visions, they violate the fundamental laws of reality." "The laws, you know," Dr. McKenna corrected gently. "We discovered that reality has far more layers than anyone suspected. The laws don't break. They evolve, just as consciousness does." To demonstrate, she initiated what humans call the quantum symphony. Throughout the solar system, the hidden networks of consciousness amplifiers began to resonate in perfect harmony. The effect was overwhelming. A concert of consciousness that spoke to both organic and crystalline minds in their native languages. Vexthor watched in awe as his own fleet began to respond to the symphony. The living crystal that formed their ship's cores, a closely guarded secret of Xylaxian technology, started to resonate with the quantum fields. But instead of causing damage or disruption, the resonance created something new, a bridge between organic and crystalline consciousness that spanned the gulf between their species. "Your ships," Chen observed with genuine interest, "they're alive in their own way, aren't they? We always suspected as much, but seeing it now, beautiful." The admission caught Vexthor off guard. "How long have you known about our living ships?" "We recognized the patterns centuries ago," Chen replied. "It's one of the reasons we developed our consciousness technology the way we did. We wanted to be ready to communicate with all forms of awareness, organic, crystalline, technological, and everything in between." Throughout the fleet, more and more Xylaxians were experiencing the temporal consciousness bleed. But instead of causing panic, it was creating something unprecedented: understanding. They saw their own history from new angles, recognized patterns they had been blind to, and began to question assumptions that had guided their civilization for millennia. "Your species," Vexthor said slowly, his crystalline form displaying patterns of deep contemplation. "You could have used this technology as a weapon. You could have overwhelmed our consciousness, controlled our ships, destroyed our hierarchy from within." "We could have," Chen acknowledged, pouring yet another cup of tea. "But that would have violated everything we've learned about the nature of consciousness. Domination breeds resistance. Understanding breeds growth. We chose growth. Dr. McKenna's hologram shifted, displaying a new set of mathematical models. What you're experiencing now is just the beginning. The quantum consciousness network can do far more than bridge our differences. It can help us explore the true nature of reality itself. The model showed something that defied conventional physics, points where consciousness itself influenced the fundamental forces of the universe. The Zalaxians recognized aspects of their own advanced science in the equations, but taken in directions they had never imagined possible. 3,000 years, Vexthor mused, his crystalline form displaying patterns of deep revelation. We thought we were containing a potential threat. Instead, we were witnessing the birth of something entirely new. Not just witnessing, Chen corrected. Participating. Every attempt to suppress us forced us to think differently, to explore new possibilities, to understand consciousness itself in deeper ways. In a very real sense, the Zalaxian Empire helped create what we've become. Throughout both fleets, the quantum symphony continued to play. But now, something new was being added to its harmony. The unique resonance of Zalaxian consciousness, choosing to join the dance of its own accord. The future hung in the balance, not between war and peace, but between limitation and possibility. And in the silence between the notes of that cosmic symphony, both species began to hear the first whispers of what they might become together. Tomorrow's yesterday. The vast expanse of space around Earth had become a canvas of possibility. Quantum fields shimmered with consciousness signatures from both human and Zalaxian minds, creating patterns that defied traditional physics, but spoke to a deeper truth about the nature of reality itself. High Commander Vexthor's crystalline form had taken on new patterns, combinations of light and shadow that none of his species had ever displayed before. The rigid hierarchy that had defined Zalaxian society for millennia was transforming, one mind at a time, as the implications of human advancement rippled through their collective consciousness. "Tell me, Admiral Chen," he said, his translator now perfectly attuned to the subtle nuances of human speech, "what happens next? Your species has revealed capabilities beyond our comprehension. You could reshape the galaxy according to your will." Chen smiled, retrieving a small wooden box from her desk. Inside was another set of teacups, these crafted specifically to accommodate Zalaxian physiology. "That's exactly what we've been trying to avoid," she said, carefully preparing a new brew. "Power isn't about reshaping reality to match your will. It's about understanding reality deeply enough to dance with it." Dr. McKenna's hologram shifted, displaying a new set of quantum equations that merged Zalaxian crystalline mathematics with human consciousness theory. "Look at these patterns," she suggested. "Your civilization mastered the manipulation of crystal consciousness. We learned to bridge the gap between different forms of awareness. Together, we could explore aspects of reality that neither of us could reach alone." Throughout the solar system, humanity's hidden achievements continued to reveal themselves. But now, they were changing, adapting, incorporating elements of Zalaxian crystalline technology in real time. The quantum probability engines weren't just showing what humanity had built, they were demonstrating what both species could become. "Your deception," Vexthor observed, watching the transformation with newfound understanding. "It was never about hiding your power. It was about waiting for us to be ready to understand it." "Not just you," Chen replied, offering him a specially designed cup of tea. "Us too. We needed time to grow beyond our own limitations, to understand that true advancement isn't about superiority or dominance. It's about harmony, finding ways for different forms of consciousness to enrich each other." The quantum symphony reached a new crescendo as Zalaxian crews began actively participating in the consciousness network. Their crystalline minds added new dimensions to the human quantum equations, creating possibilities that neither species had imagined before. "Look," Dr. McKenna said softly, directing their attention to the space between the fleets. The quantum fields had begun forming new structures, hybrid creations that combined organic fluidity with crystalline precision. This is what happens when different forms of consciousness learn to work together. The universe itself responds. Vexthor's senior staff watched in amazement as their own ships began to evolve. The living crystal at their cores resonated with the quantum fields, unlocking capabilities that had always existed but had never been recognized. The rigid hierarchy of their fleet formation dissolved into something more organic, more adaptive, yet still uniquely Zylaxian. 3,000 years of preparation, Vexthor mused, his crystalline form displaying patterns of deep revelation. But not for war. For this moment of transformation. Every species in the galaxy has something unique to offer, Chen said, sipping her tea. The Zylaxians mastered crystalline consciousness. Others have explored different aspects of reality. Humanity's gift was learning to bridge these differences, to create harmony from diversity. Across both fleets, minds were opening to new possibilities. Human quantum technology merged seamlessly with Zylaxian crystal science, creating interfaces that could connect with any form of consciousness. The rigid boundaries between organic and crystalline, between past and future, between different forms of awareness began to blur. Your hierarchy won't end, Chen assured Vexthor, noting his concern for his civilization's future. It will evolve. Just as our apparent primitive state was a chrysalis, your rigid structure was a foundation for something greater. Dr. McKenna's hologram displayed one final set of equations, a mathematical representation of what their combined civilizations could achieve. This is just the beginning, she said, her eyes bright with possibility. There are forms of consciousness we haven't encountered yet, aspects of reality we haven't imagined. Together, we can explore them all. Throughout the solar system, human and Zylaxian consciousness continued to merge and dance through the quantum fields. Cities that had been hidden in dimensional pockets emerged transformed, showcasing how organic and crystalline architecture could enhance each other. The Moon's quantum research facilities began incorporating Zylaxian crystal technology, exponentially increasing their capabilities. There will be resistance, Vexthor warned, though his tone carried no threat. Many in the Empire will struggle with these changes. Of course, Chen agreed. Change is never easy. But look at what we've already achieved. The very forces you brought to wage war have become the seeds of transformation. Imagine what we can do with willing partners. The quantum symphony reached its culmination, a harmony of organic and crystalline consciousness that echoed through space itself. In that moment, both species glimpsed what they could become, not through conquest or submission, but through mutual growth and understanding. As the last notes faded, Admiral Chen raised her teacup in a traditional Earth gesture of fellowship. High Commander Vexthor, his crystalline form now displaying entirely new patterns of possibility, raised his specially designed cup in response. To tomorrow, Chen offered. To yesterday, Vexthor responded, understanding now that both were simply different aspects of the same eternal dance. And in the space between their vessels, human and Zylaxian consciousness continued to merge and evolve, writing the first notes of a new chapter in galactic history, one where diversity bred strength, difference sparked growth, and the greatest power came not from domination, but from understanding. The war that never was had ended, the future that always could be had begun.